This next video is in English. It's about the Tories on the UK and how they are being fractured. The volume is low, but I will be providing commentary.
He is an absolute monarchy moderated by regicide. That was William Hague's assessment of the party he used to lead when also described the leadership structure of the Conservatives. And it's this unique leadership structure that has caused so many problems for the Tories as of late. It allowed rebels to topple not just Johnson but also Sunak, with it creating intense factionalism, something that's now tearing the Tory party apart. As things stand, the Tories are more than 20 points behind in the polls. And the question right now is
20 points, that's a lot.
Loses the next election, but by how much? In Westminster circles, there tends to be a collective view that the Tory party has existed for centuries and will always exist. But that isn't necessarily true.
That sounds like the PRI in Mexico. Yeah, a traditional big party that it seems like it's gonna stop gathering support from
whether the Tory party could go down this road in the next few years. With this in mind, let's take a look at the current state of the Tory party, what could happen in the next election, and ultimately whether we're about to witness the demise of the Conservatives.
Strong words. The demise of the Conservative Party.
If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell.
Which is,
to stay in the loop.
it's like,
we release new videos.
it's like losing an institution.
As you know, if you've watched any of our recent videos on this channel,
and
you would just have the most basic
I don't know, it has been rocky for the Tory party because they changed leadership too much.
The party seems more concerned about settling scores amongst themselves.
Rishi Sunak, and then there was a lady before that, and then a crazy guy with a crazy haircut before him.
Actually managing the country. And ultimately,
and that happened in less than a year, I think.
Set in. And Sunak is now stuck trying to assert his authority as a one-nation centrist, while also desperately attempting not to frustrate the right of the Tory party so much that they launch a leadership challenge against him. And Sunak is also struggling to assert himself as a prime minister with a distinct policy platform, largely because any attempts at this are overshadowed.
He doesn't have the support of his party, and he's trying to rally everybody behind him instead of using his energy and the energy of his party to lead his country.
Like the Bletchley Park AI Safety Summit. But invariably, while these attempts might linger in the headlines for a couple of days, journalists always move back to discussions about the state of the Tory party. And this has been noticed by the electorate, who are punishing the incumbent government with a more than 20-point polling deficit. And the problem is that as this bad polling persists, the factionalism seems to get...
The party is fractured, and everybody understands that as a fail in leadership. And so, instead of governing a country and assessing the national issues in economic safety and security, he needs to dangle into its party.
Suggests the Tories could be on track to win only 113 seats, which would mean them losing a huge 232 seats.
Which is a lot. 272? That's a lot.
Seats, bringing them up to a whopping 443 seats in the Commons. Labour, overall then, based on this maths, Labour would have a majority of 236 seats.
236?
Polls are simply a snapshot of how people feel in a particular moment.
Seats for Labour? Come on.
Way guaranteed to happen. However, it does give us an insight and an indication.
It's like they're projecting a lose for them. And then the Labour Party is gonna clean house.
In 1997, when he entered Downing Street with a 178-seat majority. If electoral calculus are correct then this would make Starmer the most electorally successful Prime Minister in post-war history. Now, given the current state of the Tory party when they're in power, there's a
even though the Tory party is in power, they are in a state of decay.
The Tories broadly represent the right in the UK, but they don't have ideological distinctness. Their ideology ultimately shifts with different leaders, and how united they are depends on the strength of that leader. When Thatcher was in power, the party shifted towards the neoliberal right, while when Cameron was in power, the party shifted towards the One Nation centre. Generally, each faction of the party can tolerate each other, provided that elections are won and the party remains strong. But right now, the party doesn't look like they could possibly win an election, and Sunak doesn't appear all that strong. So this factionalism issue is only likely to spiral, and given the expected scale of the impending defeat, some worry that it
So
could
they are
be enough to
describing the
split
Tory party
together,
as a fractured
which refuses
party
the Tories wouldn't even
with
have
no
that much
leadership.
choice when it comes to
And
the
Ricky
next
Sunak
leader.
is losing
And
time
this position too would be
projecting
a season
leadership.
challenge anyway.
He
Another
needs
election
to-
would likely be another half
he needs to
decade
project
away.
leadership.
And in that time, their job would be
He needs to
lead
do
the unleadable
two
and
things
try and hold
at the
a
same
mutually divided
time.
party together.
Like
Perhaps then the new leader would decide
they
that
would
best
say
way to
in the
hold party
States,
together
he needs to
is
walk
end
and
the
chew at the same
infighting and
time.
begin a purge of the other factions. Or perhaps they hold their faction together and others jump ship. Either way, it's hard to see a world where factionalism doesn't increase and we don't see defections elsewhere. This isn't helped by the presence of Reform UK either. Reform is a right-wing party which was temporarily headed by Nigel Farage, but unlike the Tories, they're not a broad church. They represent the neoliberal right, and as such, infighting is kept to a minimum. Yes, they're a new party, and yes, polls predict that they'll only win about 7% of the vote in the next election. But the Tories frustrated with factionalism after the next election, this could be a good satellite party to jump ship to if the infighting does get particularly bad. Ultimately, the point we're making here is that things are already looking pretty devastating for the Tories right now, and the election is bound to make things worse. As such, there are fears that heightened factionalism could cause the party to split.
It's like they have the
making it
leprosy.
difficult for them to re-enter office in the future, and possibly even leading to the permanent demise of the Tories. Now, this might sound far-fetched, but once dominant parties do sometimes falter, realignment is rare, but it does happen. Now, when it comes to our journalism, you clearly expect us to provide.
Since everybody's predicting a huge loss for the Tories, and they don't coalesce around philosophy, they coalesce around leadership, and since they are a fractured party, for them means having bad leadership, because Rishi Sunak, who is supposed to be the leader now, he's a centrist and it's not popular with everybody in the party. They either get rid of the faction that it's not helping them unite, coalesce, and let those jump ship to another ship, or they try to show leadership, and it's tough because you will never ever be able to please everyone. It's most of the time we read and hear stories about leaders and how they triumph, but you have to remember that they didn't have the support of everybody. Most of the time they have to win without the support that they should have been having from their own members, and also against their competition. So yeah, right now it doesn't look good for the Tories. It seems like Labour is gonna clean the house, unless in the next in the near future and in the medium future the Tories coalesce and they start to show up support and rally their people around their leader. But it seems like they don't want to. They would rather have someone else as their leader. Why? Well, I think there are many points to argue about Rishi Sunak not being a good leader, but the people before him also were like not the highest standard for leadership within the Tory party, which is like it's like saying Rishi Sunak wasn't the brightest bulb, but he was the brightest bulb within his lot. I would put it that way. So yeah, the macroeconomics are not good for the UK right now. They are having huge problems, especially with energy solutions, and it shows with that 20 points gap of support. And it's not gonna be better for whoever tries to take over leadership on the UK. The world environment right now, it's not good for anybody. Nobody's like enjoying what's happening right now. And yeah, it means the demise of the Tory party. It's going to mean the rise of new parties or Labour, but they're not gonna like what they're going to encounter on the world stage and what the world is trying to take from them and what it's trying to hand them as a deal. Because right now the UK, it's a place where there's a lot of inequality. There's a lot of it's becoming not the city in the hills, the bright city in the hills that it used to be. It's not becoming let's say a paradise for companies or people. It's becoming something of a place where you don't want to go, where you don't aspire to go and start a life. They have isolated themselves, and they need to. And it's gonna take a lot of time, but they need to start creating more bridges, especially within their nearest zone, geographical zone of influence, because the British Empire is no longer what it used to be, where they could just gather resources from all around the world. So it's gonna take, yes, leadership, but also smart dealing. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm not saying I have the solutions. Just gonna say, with my broken crystal ball, that it's gonna be rough.